Welcome to Cinematalkraphy. We watch movies with you so you don't have to.
Welcome to Cinematography. I'm your host, Roberto Vegas, joined by...
Brent Hughes.
And this is a strange one because Robert forgot an XLR cable, so we're passing the microphone between the two of us.
Amateur.
Totally amateur. It makes me feel like that. We just got right now out here at the Alamo Drafthouse, Slaughter Lane, out of X-Men Days of Future Past. This was a fucking awesome movie.
I enjoyed the movie.
This was... No, you... Did you ever see X3? I know we talked about it in the theater, but we might as well get it in recording.
I saw it a little bit in passing, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it.
What I love about this movie, first and foremost, is that it completely washed out any taste of X3 I had in my mouth. First Class was like the first... Like X-Men First Class, the one before this, was sort of the pre-wash, if you will. Like you're swigging the mouthwash just right away, just trying to get all the gunk and junk out of your mouth. This was like the deep dentist clean. And I fucking love this movie.
I think I liked this movie less than you.
Okay, well, here's the thing. What didn't you like about this movie? I'll ask you this, and then I'll say what I loved.
Well, first and foremost, I did enjoy the movie, but... It's weird because there's a strange mix of things that I did and did not like, and of course I'm a big fan of time travel stuff, and I'm a big fan of like altered history kind of stuff, which is always fun. But there was just some, I think, stylistic choices that didn't. It's not like it offended me or anything, but it just didn't resonate with me, and sometimes it felt like a little over the top, and it just. Some moments, especially early on, I think as the movie kind of went on, it started working a little bit more favorably for me. But some of the stuff early on just really didn't resonate with me all that much.
Well, I will say, at least during the beginning, I'm with you there. The whole Futurescape thing, I like Futurescapes, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of that. But I seen the dystopian thing all the damn time, and that gets very played and, tried and played out, so to speak. Once the movie got into 73 proper, like once it got to become a period piece, I think that's when I really, really started to love the film. Much like I like First Class for being that period piece.
I mean, I really enjoyed First Class, and that was something that I don't think many people expected to enjoy as much as anybody did. And I do think there was still some stylistic stuff, like, once it switched over that I didn't like, but... Once it really started getting into the story, it did get better.
Like, what stylistic things? Like, for me, I dug the whole, at least, I'm always on the fence when it comes to time travel. Usually I'm a big fan of time travel, depending on how it's done. But I'm always cautious as you're just doing time travel for the sake of doing time travel. And that, for me, at least, Future Days of Future Past never felt that way, especially sending Logan back and kind of having him as our eyes and ears in the past. But what I enjoyed a lot about it felt, in the movie, Nixon comes out. We have a lot of references to the Cold War and things like that. But I guess I asked, what didn't you like stylistically, man?
I mean, there were, some shots that didn't totally work for me, and there was some bits of dialogue that didn't work for me. And there were just... moments here and there that just I felt like, oh, I'm supposed to feel something here, but I don't feel something here.
Now, because for me, I was about the same way, but I did feel something, and maybe it's, what's funny about this movie is it really, really requires you to have seen First Class. It almost requires you to have seen all the X-Men movies, and maybe that's where it falters a lot, because some of the people coming back in this movie... Because First Class just wasn't, because First Class came right after 3, people weren't expecting it to be good and kind of skipped it. And this was one of coming back out of First Class where people heard were good and may have not seen that film and kind of missed a lot of that whole building.
Possibly. I mean, I saw those movies. It was really nice to see some people come back. I was like, oh, that's that dude from that older movie. Oh, he does ice stuff. Oh, shit. I know him.
Maybe that's the thing is that I really dug... like of the characters they really developed, I really dug them a lot. Like I dug the heck out of, I think it's Quicksilver. Yeah, Quicksilver is that because he had such an interesting attitude to him as a character. Like one of my favorite shots, one of my favorite special effects shots, and I hope that you enjoyed this shot because of the way it was done, was when we were seeing Quicksilver going into like his super speed mode to kind of freeze time, or not freeze time, but slow time down to kind of manipulate it.
Yeah, I heard beforehand that there was a Quicksilver scene, and there definitely was, and it was very cool.
Oh no, I love that they put like, if I, that whole music set, him putting headphones on, putting that music on, and just like, manipulating the scene so fucking perfectly. Like he's an artist, like he's in his zen moment, and it was probably the coolest, like for me, it was the coolest scene in the film.
Yeah, definitely. It was very wish fulfillment, very fun and interesting. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, when I saw the first Spider-Man, I was like, what, 12 or 10 or something,
Right.
And you're just like, man, what if I could actually shoot webs out of my hands? And then you're just like flexing your hand, like, man, what if this works one of these times? Wouldn't that be crazy? I think a lot of people are going to get that with this Quicksilver scene, for sure.
Well, what I liked about it for sure was like Quicksilver, his introduction was essentially just a normal fucking kid. Just like, like, well, what's the big deal? I'm a kleptomaniac. I steal things like a Pong arcade and a bunch of ding-dongs and shit like that, which is amazing, because wouldn't we all steal a Pong arcade back then? At least I would. But what I dug about the film a lot is that a lot of the human emotion that came out in First Class, for me, was back in full effect, especially because we're dealing with sort of only a couple years after that moment in time happened, and we're kind of dealing with a broken Xavier and a broken, team, just because that's what happened at the end of the film.
Yep.
But also, what I really also dug in general, was, the thing, I'll pull back that and start to say things I have problems with, for sure. I really didn't dig the way they did time travel, because I felt it was kind of jarring to have both time streams working at the same time. Having present and past go in sync, and until I don't even know her mutant name, to be honest, but fucking Ellen Page. Whatever her fucking mutant name was, until she like pulled away the power, that's when the time stream became. It kind of was a bit confusing. It almost felt, for lack of better words, it felt Matrixy.
Yeah, it was a little sloppy. But for me, I'm super easy to buy into stuff and suspend my disbelief. So once you know that you're going into time travel, you just kind of had to let so much stuff go. But yeah, I didn't find too much at issue with it, but I can definitely see where it was kind of confusing. It was very sloppy.
And ultimately I didn't either, but like that's the only complaint I can see, because it's hard for me to complain about this movie because I enjoyed it as much as I did. I dug a lot of what it did. I really, really thought they presented the Sentinels in a very, very new and fresh light, and really played upon that 70s era fears, like the Cold War, the Vietnam War ending, and here's a new fight, and really playing up on that specific humanity fear at that time. That I really enjoyed them doing that, weaving it into the actual fabric of history. Like even when Mystique is Raven or Mystique revealed like to the public, like the footage we're seeing is a whole bunch of like 8mm home cameras and things like that.
Yeah, it's all like Zapruder film kind of stuff, and that was cool. But like, something about the Sentinels didn't work for me. I don't know if it was like the design or the idea that, hey, there's these super advanced robots in the 70s, or
that was a bit.
I don't know. Something about it just wasn't, like, specifically the Sentinels just didn't fully work for me.
That was a bit of a stretch, having fully fucking, like, we have a space polymer, it's no longer metal, and we have plastic bullets that actually, like, yeah, you're right. There was a little bit of things, but I have to imagine because of the idea that, like we have, what's cool about the movie is that it's, if I put it in terms of the timeline, it's post-JFK assassination. and that adds an entirely different mechanic to the actual history and timeline of world. And I think that, if maybe, just maybe, things had been like mutants exist and the government knew and they kind of funded it on the sly, maybe those things would exist. Probably not that advanced, but, what I did, I would say plastic guns would exist and things like that for sure. But what I really, really liked, at least the Sentinels, that they felt new. Only because I've seen so many incarnations of Sentinels over my life that they've never felt menacing, and this is the first time they've actually felt menacing.
Yeah, this was my first introduction to that force as an entity, and I don't know. For me, it was just this weird thing where it's like, oh, here's this completely unbeatable thing that just exists, and like there's not much to it. It seems like kind of a flat, super powerful villain sort of obstacle to overcome.
Well, because that's the thing I wish they'd done more. Like I when they developed Tusk or Tarsk or whatever fucking Peter Dinklage's character is. I forget the guy's name. The character's name. It's on my head. Or Lannister, whatever he is in Game of Thrones. I wish they had more time to develop him more as a character, because whenever you got a chance to have him act and sort of explain what he sees the Sentinels doing, the Sentinel Project doing, is that it would unite humanity against a common foe, not necessarily because to face to essentially face extinction. And I really would have loved to hear more of his past, because like you could see when we go to his sort of office when Mystique kind of sneaks in, I noticed that one of the characters had a robotic, he had like in his hand a robotic arm or leg or something like that. I would love to have seen more of what this character did and sort of his background.
Yeah, it might have been cool to kind of flesh out a little bit more of his story. I forgot who it was. I heard someone talking the other day that it kind of would have been interesting to kind of delve into how he's kind of vilifying and sort of persecuting these mutants in the same way that you would imagine his character probably would have been throughout most of his life. And so that parallel would have been kind of interesting to see a little bit. I don't know. I think a little bit more from him would have been good.
Well, yeah, because in terms of the X-Men when they were created, there's always been parallels in terms of discussion to the civil rights movement and things like that, and we're in that prime era of doing kind of discriminations very highly in all forms, for that matter, whether it be height-based or race-based or that. And I would have loved to have seen that get developed more. First Class did a good job of it, but I would love to have seen more just because of the time period that we're in. And that's sort of the one thing that I'm always bummed out about the film, is that we really didn't spend a heck of a whole lot of time with the 70s as that period. We just had the 70s as kind of this backdrop for, here's the world we exist in, but we're not going to really use the mechanics of the world, so to speak. We're just going to have sort of the technology of the world.
Yeah, it was kind of used as just kind of dressing, like window dressing. But yeah, it definitely, that would have added an interesting element. I still think it would have still had a lot of the same problems that it had for me, even if they had kind of gone into that a little bit further.
Well, is it simply, I guess, kind of, we're almost at our usual 30-minute mark, I think. Is it because for you, because I know you're not the biggest on fantasy in general, and sometimes, science fiction is usually a good thing, but usually after a certain point, you start to lose that suspension of disbelief. At least I've noticed when we talked about other films, things like that. Was it because of the mutant factor? Like, what was your biggest issue? Again, this is not saying it was a bad film. We both agree it's a pretty decent film. I think it's a better film than you do, but that's neither here nor there. But what was the point that really made a major problem for you?
Well, yeah, so I did really enjoy it. Probably not enough to go see it in theater again, which you said you would like to. Oh, yeah. But I think for me, like, honestly, it really just boils down to every now and then there'd be kind of a weird moment where it was like, I could see where maybe that could have been handled a little bit differently. And maybe it's something that a character did. Maybe it's something that the camera did. Maybe it's, it's just like sometimes it was just the simple like aesthetic of the shot that kind of took me out of it a little bit and was just kind of weird. And it's something that I think isn't going to bother most people. But it was like just on the line of something that like kind of took me out of the immersion of the film. And I think the problems that I'm having with the film are very like personal problems with the film. I don't think this is going to be a widespread issue with most people. But it was just like little weird things that just kind of added up over the film.
Well, you're all right. Now I think about the movie, there was a heck of a whole lot of really kind of soft focusy shots. That makes any sense? Or a lot of really, like there were some really interesting shot, positioning or framing for sure. But a lot of the framing they tended to, like, I think like one of the shots that they would always seem to cut to is whenever Mystique's sneaking away, they sort of do a wide shot of the crowd and her sort of blending in there. And I know they always do that, but they went to that kind of framing a heck of a whole lot, more so than I thought they would. I think ultimately what I liked about this movie was the fact that when they brought the 70s in, they brought it in appropriately. And when they had a lot of those things, kind of references, that was appropriate. And two, I'm really glad that they didn't necessarily really harken on the, what's the future like? That kind of joking thing, having Logan be talking about, like they only like reference it a couple times, like 3 networks, huh? And PBS, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, I thought it was very fun, and I thought it was really really nice how they tied in a bunch of themes and plot devices that I really enjoy. Like I said, the time travel stuff and the revisionist history stuff was always really cool. Like the JFK thing, that was kind of funny.
That was probably my coolest thing, was that Magneto killed JFK? No, he was a mutant of ours. Dude, I would love fucking JFK mutant. Okay, here's the question. What if JFK is a mutant? What is his mutant power?
Man, you're throwing that on me. Like there's so many powers he could have.
Let's say his powers are physical. They're not mental, like he doesn't have telepathy or things like that. Like they're just physical in nature.
Okay, I think maybe he has the power for immaculate hair control.
That could be something. I mean, he could have the ability to not only put his hair in the perfect coif kind of thing, but extend it, use it as weapons, and like choke people and things like that. That's JFK's power right there. But what I dug was like the idea of that being, that they worked that into the fabric of a thing, because that would make entire sense as to why he would be in a maximum security prison, because motherfucker tried to kill, essentially either A, assassinate the president, or B, was framed as assassination. And then we got another, fun bit of conspiracy nuts and things like that. But I liked how they worked in all those things for sure.
Yeah, that was really cool and really fun.
As my final thought in the film, I do want to go see it a second time. If nothing more than to kind of, catch certain things. Usually when it comes to time travel movies, I try to catch either references or kind of funny jokes and things like that. And I didn't really see that many. So, I mean, if I saw it a second time, I might do it for that kind of watching. But ultimately, if I don't see it, if time doesn't allow me to see it a second time, I'm definitely going to pick this movie up on Blu-ray, because this is at least a good enough X-Men film for me to really dig it. And B, I really, really, really hope that they put commentary on this one, because I'd love to hear, is it Bryan Singer, right? Yeah, I'd love to hear Bryan Singer talk about this movie, because this is him coming back into the directorial chair, and I think he came back with full effect and full force.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be the kind of thing where once it eventually hits your preferred streaming services, I'm going to see it and I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that was pretty fun. And then I'll one night I'll put it on and I'll be like, yeah, this was fun. All right.
It definitely is. I'll be honest. Out of all the summer movies we've seen so far, it is definitely my top one right now.
Yeah, we haven't seen a ton of.
No. I know that, but compared to like this, like if I have to compare Godzilla to this is right now on number one. That doesn't mean that X-Men will stay number one. There might be other films that will trump it to be number one, but as of right now in this recording, it is currently number one in the summer movies I've seen.
Yeah, well, there will be movies that trump it. There will be, Guardians of the Galaxy. There will be How to Train Your Dragon 2. But I do agree that it's better than Godzilla.
Yeah, I'm super ready for fucking Guardians of the Galaxy. But regardless of the fact, good job, Fox. Good job, Bryan Singer, and such. Bryan, thank you so much for being on again as my host, or my co-host, I should say, and joining me in these crazy movie escapades. Tell people they can find you online, sir.
You can find me out in the parking lot of the Alamo Drafthouse, where I'm at right now, if you happen to be in the area. Or, if it's more convenient, you can find me on Twitter at Gatowag, Gatowag, and just look for me. I'm out there.
Of course, you can also check out his filming work and editing work on Mr. Brian Brushwood's Scam School there on the TestTube network if you want to check out the awesome graphics. And I know you're doing something, I don't know if you're doing something else, but I know you're working on stuff in the background. I don't know how much you can ever talk about all the stuff you worked on. I will say this before I say my outro. There's an album idea that you have that relates to this movie's thematic. I really think you should do that album soon.
One day that album will hopefully be made.
I'm just telling you. You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, good. Of course, you can find me. I'm at Vincent404 there on the Twitters. If you want to comment on your experience with X-Men Days of Future Past, go to our website, CosmicRadio.TV/Cinematalkraphy. There you'll find links to show notes, previous episodes, and, of course, other show things networks, such as my so-called 8-Bit Life, my little interview show that I happen to have various guests on, and things like that. I've had recently Kay Murdoch of hip-hop producer fame and for Famicom, and Chat Realm's own Spearmint Nitrate. So that's it for today. So tune in next time. Ta-ta.
Beady boop, ba doop boop.